spice flows again on the desert planet Arrakis. Shai-Hulud. You're watching Textron Gang. Man, anytime I could start my day with a little Dune reference, I'm a happy camper. Who knew that it would take some kind of, bad malware for me to talk Dune on Textron Gang? But hey, whatever, I'm happy with it. I'm happy to go with Dune. Welcome everyone to our Monday version of Textron Gang. And I hope you had, for those of you who celebrated the long Thanksgiving holiday, I hope you had a great time with family and friends and loved ones, and enjoyed your day off or your days off, and you're here refreshed, ready, eager to get back to work and talk about things that are important to us in the tech world. We've got a great gang lineup to talk about stuff today. Let me introduce you to them. We have Terry Robinson, resident cyber person. Our Silicon Valley John Swartz up in Canada. She celebrated Thanksgiving earlier. Garima Bhopal. Garima, good to see you. And of course, well, we're calling him the Dean, but yesterday, I think, or at our last show, pre-Thanksgiving, we decided he's now a bard. The bard, Mike Vizard. Welcome, gang. How are you today? I hope you all had a great weekend and long holiday. So, Mike, Shai-Hulud is back. The spice is flowing again on Arrakis. Yeah. The guild is happy. Security people and Linux administrators, not so much. What's going on?
Yeah, things are a little crazy out there. A lot of security folks spent the holiday cleaning up after this mess because, well, Shai-Hulud is back. It is a self-propagating worm. This time it seems to have also included some malware that basically exposed everybody's tokens. So now anybody could just basically log into anybody's repository. This mainly affects NPM packages and repositories holding a lot of JavaScript code, but it's a bit of a mess. And Alan, I'm going to put this to you. I mean, this is not the first time that we've gotten this kind of wake-up call about software supply chain security. But my question is, are we just going to roll over and hit the snooze button one more time?
This ain't my first worm, as they say on Dune. Seriously, I don't want to minimize this, right? We've got a serious problem in NPMs. And it's the same kind of problem we see across the repo world in general, which is people, because they download it from a repo or from a package manager, assume all is well, and off they run with their software. And no one is policing these packages. No one is policing the uploads to the repos. So, buyer beware, user beware is the day. But is this worm, I mean, we've seen a lot of worms come over the years, right? The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. This particular Shai-Hulud 2, or the sequel, or whatever you want to call it, seems to be a better version than the original in that it's faster, it propagates better, and it can therefore be more dangerous. And we've seen this happen too, right? You get iterations and reiterations of these malware variants, like viruses. That's what they're named. We call them viruses, right? Because they're like viruses in the real world that are constantly evolving and evading, right? It's a cat and mouse game. And now we see the next variant of Shai-Hulud. Is this going to be the last one? Probably not. The bigger issue, though, is what do? We all, 80%, 75% of the software in our apps is downloaded from JavaScript repositories or artifact repositories, or Maven Java, or there's so many different repos where we get our software, Docker containers. There are, what do? There are a lot of companies that are now starting to put out safe packages, safe distros, safe containers that they certify, for these common, and you can't have one for everything because there's millions of different variants. But for these very popular ones, we have a clean version that we guarantee is clean. And if you use our stuff and use that, you're okay. SUSE does it for one, right? There are others. Maybe that is where we're headed. That because and I've said this before, I lay this at the blame of the repo managers, of the maintainers. I think they have a duty to make sure what goes into their repos, into their collections, is safe.
Um,
So
I was
that's where I am.
did you talked about, do we roll over and hit the snooze button, whatever, roll over. Um, is that what happened between September and now? Or did this just come so
No,
quickly?
no, this is a new variant.
Okay.
This is definitely a new variant. It's look, this is a virus and vaccine, right? You change the DNA coding or the cellular coding or what have you, and it evades what you had before.
Mm.
So, though you may have thought you were protected against Shai-Hulud 1, this is definitely a better version of it that's more insidious.
Marima, are developers just frankly spending too much time engaging in what you might refer to as unprotected downloading? I don't know.
Right. I mean, to build some more context, and I'll come to that question, Mike, in a while. So, what this virus is all about? This is a major cyber attack, which is also very fast moving and dangerous, as the article refers to, because it hits the supply chain. And what it does is it does data harvesting. It steals developer credentials, for example. If you have open credentials in your, ecosystem, API keys, cloud tokens, and it exfiltrate them to a public repository, right? So when this infected packages are installed, the worms harvest developer credentials or API keys or cloud tokens, and then you can kind of be susceptible to n number of attacks, like secrets from your local environment, CI/CD pipeline. Your credentials are kind of at a risk, and stolen data, for example. So it becomes a Dropbox for stolen data, for example,
Mm.
right? So now, what we can do as practitioners and developers, I mean, the first and foremost thing, I mean, Ellen, you mentioned about this. Many organizations have been working tightly with this open source ecosystem. Our good old friend Tracy Reagan, for example, is heavily invested in OpenSSF. And we have from CD Foundation, there is a SIG, which looks at these kind of, practical cyber attacks on CI/CD pipelines. There are assessments and audit mechanisms available. Now, what we should be doing as an organization, of course, there are from enterprise perspective, we always have wrappers, for example, right? Security guidelines to kind of ensure and secure our environments. But more or less, I think it also is a strategic imperative for defenders. How do we build robust supply chain audits, for example? And this is not something which is like off the table. I mean, you have to do it, because these attacks are getting even more smarter, like dependencies to detect anomalies, for example, unexpected pre-installed scripts, which in this case you will see that, right? Suspicious package updates. So these are things which you should actually monitor your system for. Credential hygienes, least privilege. Of course, if you expose your credentials, and it's a combined risk of having these attackers to kind of also decipher it. Also, I think from a hygiene perspective, it limits the possibility of what your application could do. Proactive threat hunting and anomaly detection. I mean, we have been talking about chaos engineering and all those kind of things. It's time we take it seriously, right? So if this kind of attack happens, what is the posture we have to hunt them back, and to try to kind of be from a real time perspective more proactive in detecting as well as protecting our environments. collaboration with open source communities. I mean, it is needless to say, if you're not aware of what Open SSF Foundation is doing, CD Foundation is doing, talk to some of our like community leaders like Tracy Reagan, and there are many more in the ecosystem who can actually guide and help you in this direction. And more or less, I mean, it's a matter of education and awareness. I mean, again, these attacks are not new. It's just faster and more dangerous, as Ellen you mentioned, right? So how do we educate our ecosystem? How do you invest in more like AI native defending technology applications which can defend your kind of applications from these attacks? And I mean, from long term attack patterns perspective, it's evident that this supply chain risk persists. So we'll have to think about how we manage these malwares, we how do we manage these risk attacks, and how do we ensure that automated self propagation doesn't happen, right? Credential thefts and reuse of these kind of attacking mechanism do not happen over and over again. To your point, Terry, what we were doing from September to now, I mean, it's a different form, but then again, is our posture improving? Do we have taken enough action on this, right? And again, it's needless to say that one of the most important things which will change our developers profile is how security savvy we are. This is what, like, how your developer ecosystem would change
So
is.
Garima, I've got to disagree.
Yeah.
As someone who is instrumental in starting the whole DevSecOps movement as being real, one of the lessons I've learned 10 years doing this is don't throw this on the developer's shoulders. It's not the developer's job to be the security professional. It's the security professional's job to be the security professional. When the developer goes to a repo, whether it's an NPM or Artifactory or Maven or wherever they're downloading their software from, GitHub, there's got to be a level of trust, or Docker containers, there's got to be a level of trust that what I am getting from here, at least today, it may wind up down the road, I find out there was a bug in it or something. But at least today, it's free from this kind of worm. It's free from this kind of self-replicating Trojan. And to say, buyer beware, it's on the developer, when the developer is downloading literally dozens of these from different places, packages and components and scripts, I don't think that ever works. It hasn't worked, and we've come down this road in DevSecOps. The developer has enough on their shoulders. We came up with the whole system of SBOMs. That's something we haven't mentioned here, right? SBOMs were supposed to help secure the supply chain. No, an SBOM's a great tool for forensics, right? What did this have in it? How did this bad piece get put into my package, into my pipeline? But it doesn't really address this issue. And I've been preaching about this for years. We need repo firewalls. Before you can download something from a repo, it has to, JFrog has it for Artifactory, it's called X-Ray. But we need one that's generic, that goes across repos and either puts these scripts and so forth in a sandbox and makes sure that they're free of malware or something, so that a developer has a high degree of certainty that this software is good to use. Otherwise, you're just making the developer's job impossible.
Yeah, I hear you. I think I agree with certain aspects of what you're saying, but it's also not this or that, right? I mean, you have actually put forward a very good point on what kind of security loopholes we have today, which we can restrict or have strict control on, which probably would be the job or responsibility of the security professionals. But let's assume that this attack happens. The defenders are, if they are not supported by the developer ecosystem, they would be failing at that point in time. So this is a cross functional collaboration, like vulnerability disclosure or transparency of dependency of on dependencies, or health of the code itself, the whole rapid patching mechanism. We need some kind of ecosystems to support that, and the developers needs that support. But I think it's also needless to say that developers also need to move and shift in the direction to understand what kind of modern attack patterns are happening, what kind of hygiene in coding needs to be kind of put in practice, what collaboration your security professionals would need. If you don't see the guardrails in the CI/CD pipeline, would you be the whistleblower and try to kind of ensure that this collaboration gets developed? So I think there is some kind of potential in securing that collaboration. Of course, we have been talking about this since like 2 decades now, Ellen, about DevOps and DevSecOps and
Mhm.
those kind of definitions, and how do you put this into practice. But I think the sweet spot lies into the synergy rather than building like hard boundaries.
I think
You
it's a
know,
synergy and
oh, so,
shared responsibility, kind of, on both sides. Yeah, Alan, it's not fair to just put everything on the developers' shoulders. They're not security people, but they have to be somewhat savvy in security, for all of this to work. I think. And
I mean, if you're a
well, but
security person, the way you look at this is you go, hey, I told you not to go and engage in that behavior. You went and engaged in that behavior, and then you came back and I patched you up and I sent you back out there again. But now you're just going to do the same thing over again. And eventually, like a good doctor, they just shrug and go, I'm telling you not to do this, but you got to at some point stop doing it.
yeah,
it's like going to
there's all
confession,
mentioning.
right? And going out and committing the same sin over and over again.
Wait, so like in theory, you're talking about all these prescriptive measures and this history, but I mean, when I read both these stories, I come to the conclusion of pace. It's always about the pace, and the pace is just getting worse.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
probably going to give. So you're talking about 1,000 new repositories surfacing every 30 minutes, which is significantly more than the previous iteration. At the same time, you've got more code being developed, which is just going to increase the number of repositories that need to be secured. So it's just like this escalating math. And I know it's not easy to solve, but that's just the terrifying takeaway for me, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and partial of this code is written through AI now.
right.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Shai-Hulud 3.0, I'm pretty sure is
That's
going to
coming. That's
the
yeah.
eye
You think
slicker
that's
kicked
coming
into
too?
it.
Look, so Shai-Hulud happens to be the one hitting NPMs in JavaScript. They'll be the Baron Harkonnen next on somewhere else, right? And the Paul Atreides, the Moadib over here. We've been naming these worms for as long as I've been in tech.
Mhm.
From the love virus, remember the love bug virus or whatever it was called, to
Bug.
Codex, Code Red. There's always a next one.
No. Well,
But
we need,
what
we need another science fiction
we
novel.
need a sanitary, a checkpoint Charlie for these things.
Oh dear.
So who's
Anyway, hey, we're overtime on this though. We
Yeah.
got to take a break. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again, unfortunately. But you're watching Techstrong, gang.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you, including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface. Your personal life.
Hey, folks, we're back in, interesting times in the land of social media, but we may have some actual transparency into what's going on, or at least a little more political chaos. But apparently, the folks at X are letting you see where the account is that somebody is actually following. And turns out some of the political accounts are in places that are not in the United States. They're in Africa and all kinds of places because somebody's paying for that. But John, is this going to become the new standard? Will everybody have this level of transparency, or is this a one-off kind of thing and it's just going to go away?
You know, it may be a one-off based on what's happening with X. This is, I mean, we talked about Dune. How about Doctor Strangelove? This is like some dark satire that you know. I know what the intent is. The intent's for security purposes. So there's this transparency tool that X introduced over the weekend that reveals accounts that claim to represent American political views. And what they're finding is that, wait a second, through their geo tracking, they're finding that they're coming from overseas. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There's an account called Ultra MAGA Trump 2028, which claimed to be from Washington, D.C. Well, it's actually from Africa. There's another account.
Where in Africa, though, John?
I don't know.
A lot of
Well, because I have a Nigerian prince who runs a lot of these things.
Right. We'll go. So there's another. All right, exactly. There's another account that shows up that is coming from Macedonia, where it was subsequently deleted. Then there's another one called just ampersand American, which is a bald eagle over flag, and that originated from South Asia. So that's all well and good. So they're identifying these. There's a one little glitch, however. So some reporters started looking into it, and the accuracy is not always on the spot. So NBC, for instance, they had several of their reporters display their locations where they had recently traveled, and that's where they were located rather than where they're actually based, where they do their job. The controversy got even worse when there were some viral screenshots that claimed the Department of Homeland Security account was based in Tel Aviv. So that was disabled the same night. So DHS has issued this denial, stating the account has only ever been run and operated from the U.S. So X is finding itself scrambling, trying to fix the accounts that it got wrong. So we don't know what the percentage is. I think it's highly accurate, but there's just enough to leave doubt. And again, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. When Mike sent this to me, I thought it was a satire. And then I started reading some accounts in NBC and BBC and elsewhere. And I know the intent, but the execution, as it always is with X, is a little off base.
It's so funny too, though. I have to say, if you've been sort of online and watching this, like, on X and people, chatting or whatever, now there are some commenters who are using this like as a bludgeon, right, against MAGA or whatever. They're like saying they're just dismissing whatever they said because they said, oh, well, that was from Nigeria, that was
right.
from Russia, or whatever. So it's been a little hilarious to watch people try to respond.
Well, the one of the thing I should have mentioned was that's right, Terry. One thing I want to mention is that it's just like, to me, it confounds me. It's like an Elon Musk move. They eviscerate their technical support. They get rid of all their engineering talent. Then they try something like this, for what reason, I'm not quite sure, and it just blows up in their face. I mean, what did they expect was going to happen? This is not the first time this type of scenario has unfolded at X. But again, I shouldn't be surprised because it's social media.
Well, didn't they like test this out before they sort of made it public or rolled it out?
Ostensibly.
You would think.
Hey, go fast and break things, baby.
They have have two
But
people.
that's the valley. But guys, let me play devil's advocate here. I think this is a great thing because anything that gives us a little transparency on the fake news of social media. And if we remember, right, that's why Elon supposedly bought Twitter. The bots and the fake stuff, he was going to, eliminate all of that. Now, my friend Andy Ellis, who's a pretty well-known CISO, he was CSO at Akamai for 20 years. He posted something on this, and it was around the supposedly pro-Gaza news media and pro-Gaza X accounts that it turned out none of them are actually in Gaza. Right? They're all reporting from Gaza, but from somewhere else. And I'm not saying that makes it I'm not getting involved in the Israeli-Gaza thing, but it's that kind of transparency that I think we'd all applaud. Hey, all these people who are supposedly MAGA haters or MAGA supporters, it's good to see that they're coming from Venezuela or China or North Korea or South Korea or wherever, right? I think it does give us transparency that we all would like. My problem is, what stops a Chinese deep state campaign activity from flying into Nigeria or Venezuela or Brazil and carrying this on from there, so at least it doesn't point back to China?
Right.
It points to Brazil rather. Or for that matter, what stops it now that this is the cat's out of the bag? What stops them from using Chinese nationals who are here in the US? Right? So while I think it's a great idea and I applaud it, I just don't know how effective it'll ever be.
Yeah. Yeah, the concept is good. It's just the execution is flawed. I mean, but
Yeah. I
It's
just want the other social media platforms to follow suit. I mean, some transparency is better than no transparency. So I
Yeah.
want to know if this raises the bar.
Well, okay, and I agree with all of that, except that there's also a whole facet of our society that doesn't care about the transparency. They're going to believe whatever that stuff says. They don't care if Elon Musk and them find out it's from Nigeria or Moscow or wherever, right? They're gonna they're gonna stick to the narrative. I guess that's a whole different problem and not
Well,
really.
there is that, right? That's the Joe Goebbels social media view. If you say it loud enough and often enough, people believe you.
Yeah, I guess, when they forward that stuff to me, I just want to know where it came from in the first place so I can at least have something that feels like a rational conversation.
I
Yep.
also feel this is a generational thing, right? I mean, we would see more generational awareness about how to treat social media and what kind of social engineering happens in the background. So, for example, me being from a millennial club, we are a bit more aware. But I think moving on, I think the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, I think they are very conscious about their choices, and I think the social engineering of politicizing things, I think this will not be something which is something which we have seen so far.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
I wouldn't be
Just
surprised to see Meta try to use this
no,
concept in some
I
sort
think
of
we'll
way to
see
monetize it.
copycats here.
Yeah, they're all
We'll
going to jump
definitely see.
on it.
And here's the thing: as we get other social media companies copycatting this, they'll continue to refine it,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Because like I'd like to see is, okay, so this account that's in Nigeria, what's its history, right?
Right.
What's the connection here, and see if you can start tracing it back, and maybe that's the first steps towards
Right.
taking back our society
I I would go
from
a
the
step
fake
further.
news.
I would also want to know how much of the content is AI generated. I'm not saying they
Yeah.
Yeah.
can't use it, but I just want to know, like, how much of this is noise?
Well, not all AI contact is noise there, Boomer.
No, it is not. But a lot of it is, somebody
Well, but
creating some sort of video that doesn't exist. And, it's like, I want to know.
Yeah, but it's a matter of trust also, right? I mean, even if it's not noise, nobody trusts us.
Well, but and that's the whole thing. If we're going to have trust and if you're going to be able to, look, Terry, to your point, people who are living in an echo chamber and just want their particular message reinforced don't give a crap whether it's fake or not at some level,
yeah.
right? They just want to reinforce their
They just want to reinforce their
worldview.
bias. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, and especially for young people, because I think young people are savvier. And, I made fun of Mike. I'm older than him. Young people are savvier
I,
than we
I,
are.
I'm getting tired of, people coming up to me and showing me stuff on social media. And the first thing they ask me is this true? Because nobody believes anything anymore anyway. So, but it's crazy.
But
Right.
this is the same thing. 90% of developers use AI, and 40% of them don't trust it, but they use it anyway.
Use it anyway. Well, it was interesting. Not that this is so related, but I had recently an estate sale at my mom's house, and one of the things that when they staged everything and whatever, it was all great, but they had my World Book encyclopedias.
Oh, I love the World Book.
from the 60s and 70s, right? So I had every like the yearbook that they put out every year,
Yeah.
whatever, and it got us to talking about like how when we were kids, we would consult the World Book, and it seemed to be the authority on,
It was.
a certain level
How
of
many reports did you write using your World Book?
Of course.
Exactly, and my fiance said that his dad, like if they were at the dinner table and they ask a question about something, his dad would say, "Go get the World Book."
Yeah.
And let's look
You
at.
know what? I'll show you how crazy we were in my house. My brother, I have two brothers, but the one closest to me, we would each take turns with a different letter every
Yeah.
night. Because we remember the World Book used to have the transparencies,
Oh,
like the
the
human
fraud.
body, the circulatory system,
Oh my
and
gosh, my favorite one.
or ones, about exotic places that we wanted to visit one day. My brother made that list and kept that list, and he's visited all those places.
That's
Um,
yeah.
it was the source of all knowledge. Um,
Those
That was back in the day when you had the
bomb.
encyclopedia. You had like only 3 networks, and you could basically
well,
trust
yeah, you
them where
had
they
3
tried to be.
networks, and you had the
Right.
World Book, or you could go down to the
That's-
library.
And not
Right?
that I'm criticizing getting a lot of information from a lot of different places, but there's something to be said. Like when you just had the 3 networks, there was a certain amount of journalistic
Yes.
discretion, right? They chose what was sort of important, and they didn't necessarily hype, sort of BS-y little
Their view of things.
views.
But you knew Walter Cronkite was in CBS headquarters in New York, and
Yeah.
and so was Huntley and Brinkley, and whoever else was on ABC at the time. But right, you didn't have the subterfuge of I am in the Congo and commenting on what's going on in the U.S. or what have you. It
All
was a
right.
simpler times.
So let's bring back new World Book social media site. What do you say?
I know. I see
Nobody
like
will read it.
a
Only
niche
us.
from.
Only the oldest will
I
read
see
it.
a
Nobody's
niche for
reading
World Book here. I really
Well,
do.
you know what? I could have AI draw me up one in no time.
it.
I don't know. Those transparencies were the bomb, though, man.
They were. I used to trace over them for my
Me
book
too. Me
reports.
too.
Gareem looking at us like, what are these
It's
old
like, what
people
the hell are you
talking
talking
about?
about? Yeah, it's another
But the rest of us
world.
remember.
Yeah.
All right. Hey,
Good old
let's
days.
take a break here. We are coming at you from Boca. I'm at least in Boca Raton, Florida. You can count on it. This is Tech Strong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey, folks, we're back, and by the time you're watching this, Alan and I will be in Las Vegas for AWS reInvent conference, and there's already been a steady drumbeat of news and issues coming up before the conference, including AWS is now using AI tools to accelerate migrations to their cloud platform, and we'll also see things like, well, Sumo Logic will be talking about how they're going to reinvent their entire approach to AI, using AI agents for security and observability and collecting telemetry data. And there's just going to be a ton of stuff. AWS will also be, of course, highlighting their Kiro AI agent tool that they are proud of the fact that it is specification driven. So if you've watched any of our previous shows, you know what that's all about. But it's a more reliable way of creating AI code, shall we say. And they're going to be touting the fact that, well, you know what, we can get better AI code. But there's just going to be a lot going on. Alan, I know we've been to this show in the past, and you're going to be doing some videos while we're out there. But what's your take on the state of AWS?
Well, yes, we're going to be doing more than some videos, Mike. We're really booked up for the whole week there. Looking forward to it. The state of AWS is they're still the 800-pound gorilla in the cloud hyperscaler space, right? Google, Microsoft have had some good runs. Oracle Cloud's had some great, well, they have one big customer that accounts for 2/3 of their business, but Nevertheless, they have some money on the books, but AWS is still the undisputed king and heavyweight champion. I think we're going to see a lot of announcements. It's funny. I've got new next door neighbors. Their son came in for Thanksgiving. Turns out he works for AWS in their generative AI team, and he's presenting at reInvent. So I'm going to hook up with him out there. But the beauty of reInvent is it's not just AWS. You come for AWS, but you get everything else because literally the entire ecosystem is on display there, flashing their wares. And so it's a great time to hear stories. I will tell you that our TechStrong TV coverage, which we will be streaming live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at from Vegas, is sponsored this year by SUSE, who has a huge rollout of related announcements and technologies around AWS and, of course, AI and the edge and everything else. Red Hat is very, very much engaged there. And so you think about that. These are not necessarily companies that you think of as, big AWS components because you need to go, to run OpenShift. Yes, it's available in the AWS marketplace, but it's probably not the default. Same thing with SUSE and Rancher and those kinds of things. So, but just like Mike in the last year or two, look, the big story is going to be AI. Mm-hmm. I think the big story this time will be agentic AI, where last year was more generative. But AWS, from investing in Anthropic to doing Bedrock and Kiro, have not shied away from being an AI-friendly hyperscaler. Mm-hmm. They don't have necessarily Google's position in AI, right? Google has that vertical integration that's hard to beat. And they are, their stock's flying. They're a $4 trillion company now. And I think people are recognizing that they have a catbird seat here coming around the bend in the AI race. They don't have Microsoft's GitHub and all that comes with that and their open AI relationship. But they seem to be much more open to everybody's AI, right? If you've got some AI stuff, we'll run it on AWS. And I think that's what we're going to hear a lot about.
I think there's one shadow that will show up in Las Vegas, and it's this whole notion of sovereign clouds. And folks are kind of talking more about moving workloads from one cloud, maybe into an on-premise environment or something that they have more control over. It certainly is a bigger conversation in Europe these days, and maybe our friends in Canada as well.
Well, Mike SUSE has a whole IT sovereign cloud division now.
And even though AWS these days is talking about using AI to migrate existing workloads into their cloud, AI will go the other way, right? These things will enable people to take workloads more easily out of an AWS cloud and move them to either another cloud or something else. But Garima, what's your take on what's going on here?
I agree with you, Mike, and I'll connect the dots here. So sometime back we covered this story with OpenAI and AWS partnership, right? So we had speculations at that time that which regions will be benefited out of this partnership. We saw that Silicon Valley might be like the key contenders for it, right? And then you see that they have launched this tool, AWS capability tool, which is basically providing you insights into regional capabilities of services which AWS has, and also forward thinking roadmaps. So I mean, pros are obvious to understand, but I will talk about a little bit of the cons, like how the AWS ecosystem is developing and ensuring that they probably move the workloads in the right regions. For the sake of sanity, I would say that they have not integrated it with the live like the console management system, but they are putting it as a dashboard. So the AWS capability tool will give you more possibilities to see through what kind of regions are more proactive, forward thinking, what kind of pre-deployment integrations you could do, and also talk about the cost and risk, right? So it's kind of I'm yet to kind of see if this prediction of mine or this speculation of mine is to the point or not. But I think this is driving workloads in a pragmatic way to some specific regions for some specific capabilities. Of course, this tool which we have talked about, the AWS capability tool, they don't advocate, they just say that it's a planning tool, right? But you can influence the planning, right? So I would see that that can be one of the possibilities. And then like capabilities like Kiro and all these other things, I think there will be some announcement made. Kiro for sure, because it's of interest. It's an ID, and they compete in a large scale kind of ID ecosystem. So it would be interesting to see what they're doing there.
You want to know something else I'm looking forward to? What's Google's counter programming? Right, the last couple of years at AWS, Google's always done something on site or around site there to say, hey, we're here. Last year, I think they took over the outside of the sphere and made it into the Google colors. So it'll be interesting to see what Google goes there. But look, it's 60,000 people. It takes up a good part of the strip. I'm looking forward to it.
You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to discovering that X thinks that TechStrong is now moved to Las Vegas, because we'll be tweeting.
We'll
And
test
That's
I
true.
it out while y'all are there.
and I'm also looking forward for some kind of a cloud agnostic days, looking ahead of like how we compare AWS, Google, and other platforms like Oracle and sovereign clouds. For example, like Canada has their own Cohere. But I mean, from cost constraint perspective, it will be very interesting discussions moving on.
Right.
Well,
I'm with you. I'm. It's been a long time coming, but I feel like rational conversations are finally being had about where workloads go. And AWS is fine, and it's a good choice, but it's not the only choice. And I think people are getting smarter about maybe not locking themselves into all those proprietary APIs, and they're figuring out, well, let's let the workload decide where.
they make the exact. It's funny you say that. They make the exact opposite argument when they talk about, and we've done a series of webinars here on with AWS partners on modernization and transformation, and basically moving off of VMware at an on-prem level, because you're locked in to their pricing and their licensing and everything, where AWS actually offers you choices.
Right.
And so, some people don't view it as a lock-in.
Right. Well, what they're really saying is give up the VMware proprietary APIs in favor of our proprietary.
Well, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
That was a takeaway from the
Well,
webinar
we won't
that I
get
was
fooled
part of.
again. It's a good place to end today's show, I think.
The new boss.
Guys,
Same as the old
have a
boss.
great Monday. We will be continuing. I think we have one more show before we'll be live, doing Gangs Live in Vegas at TechStrong Gang. We'll probably do our first show there Tuesday. So hopefully then. Until then, though, thank you for joining us, as always, here on The Gang. Terry, Garima, Mike, John, thank you for, of course, lending your thoughts into this. Thank you for watching. We've got a full TechStrong TV following, but for now, I'm Alan Schimmel, and we're out.